This is not the first time that you've taken on a really big issue like this. It's related, and I love that you talked about kind of the tools that you need to help people in when you're thinking about homelessness, and that was around Proposition 36. You led a coalition of mayors to say that we needed to have more increased penalties for things like drug and theft convictions, that essentially just letting people back onto the street over and over again was not helping them. It was not helping the cities. That also kind of pitted you against some of the other interests in the party, and even the governor of our state. It passed overwhelmingly, 68%, I think. So tell me a little bit about why that was a necessary step, and kind of what you're seeing now that it's passed.
Yeah, so that's referring to Prop 36, and it did pass overwhelmingly last November. It is that we're in the early stages of implementation. One thing I should just say up front, and I said this from the very beginning of that campaign, is we need our state and our counties to, just as we're doing on the city side with shelter and housing, increase our investment in inpatient treatment facilities. We have over the years, or you take the arc of the last 50 years in California, we effectively shut down, when we deinstitutionalized the mental health system in the state, the promise at the time, which sounded great and happened to some extent, but not to nearly to the extent that we needed, was that we would find more community-based solutions rather than having these big mental health hospitals that felt a little like jails, where there were abuses of some people's civil liberties, but there was also a lot of care for a lot of people who frankly needed it. We said, well, we'll go find smaller settings, more integrated into the community, run by nonprofits, and we'll just sort of spread this out across the community, and we'll be less draconian about it. And it all sounded good in theory, but over the course of those 50 years, we have failed to fund that system. We have taken an approach toward mental health that has said that the services will be mostly outpatient and voluntary. So if I'm having suicidal thoughts, I can call a hotline and talk to somebody, and that's great. But everything is going to be outpatient, or most things will be outpatient, and virtually everything will be voluntary, except for the most extreme cases of really serious schizophrenia, for example. And what I think that has led to is, it's tragic. We have folks on our streets who it's expensive to live here. They have a health issue or job loss. Maybe they're grappling with addiction. Maybe they're self-medicating with some substance, and end up becoming chronically homeless. And we see people deteriorate. And for some folks, how they sustain a life on the streets has been through petty theft. And so we've ended up in this failure mode where we're not providing inpatient, and in cases where it's necessary, involuntary treatment. We're allowing vulnerable people to fall into a very destructive life on the streets, where, again, thousands of people die from overdose and exposure to the elements every year in our state. And then our small businesses and our public spaces bear the brunt of the reality of life on the streets that does involve often a certain amount of crime and drug use and exploitation. I mean, I hate to, it's really uncomfortable to talk about, especially Democrats don't want to talk about these things, but we've gone into plenty of encampments, plenty of lived in RVs, and pulled out serious weapons caches, drug caches, prostitution rings. I mean, there are people being seriously victimized on our streets because they're in the shadows. And we have got to intervene and get people into treatment. So Prop 36, essentially, and I'm going on a little here, but it basically said, if you're repeatedly committing crimes like petty theft or public drug use, we need to intervene and give you a choice between jail or treatment. And we need to always have a treatment path. And this is where, again, I'm calling on our state and our counties to make that real for everyone who needs it. But we're going to give you a choice. We're no longer going to book you and then do pretrial diversion. Who cares if you show up again and you're right back in your tent encampment the same day you were arrested? That doesn't work. We need to actually hold people accountable for turning their lives around.